Welcome to Inside the Album. I'm Don Seckler. That's Tommy Hilkin.
Morning, everyone. Oh, good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
I have no idea. I'm doing great, Don. Good to be with
All
you
right.
as always.
Good to see you. This week we are doing a deep dive into the album Toys in the Attic by Aerosmith. First thing I want to say is if you can, subscribe. If you've already subscribed, give us a great 5-star review. We'd really appreciate it. Any kind of interaction with your different platforms is going to help us out. So please take a second and go ahead and hit that button for a follow or subscribe.
And if you're putting the stars down, 4.5, don't bother. All right.
Exactly. It's 5 or nothing.
Yeah, 5. Hit the road, Jack. I'll throw a little Ray Charles in for you. That being said, thanks, Don. You know, the foundation we created, Music for Mark, what we're doing is, you know, we put the foundation together to get music to kids of the world. Music lessons, musical instruments, whatever it takes to get music to the world. You know, Music for Mark is how we put it together. So it's musicformark.com, and we're just going to send music to the world through kids. That's where it all starts. Let them grow into the world of music. You know, you and I both know what music means in our life, so let's keep it going. Musicformark.com. Check it out. Thanks.
Yeah, we're going to hopefully be able to help out some kids and get some instruments in their hands, get them lessons, all sorts of stuff related to music. So, you know, we could use your help and check out the website. And if you'd like to help out, that would be awesome.
Awesome.
So let's talk about Aerosmith, which all time, just a great rock band, you know, a straight ahead rock band. The members, Steven Tyler, everybody kind of knows, I think. He's kind of, some people used to call him the poor man's Mick Jagger, you know, or the American Mick Jagger. I didn't really buy that. I think it was kind of because of they both have kind of the lip thing going on. So it's a little bit more of the look, you know, but they're so different. Joe Perry, lead guitar, Brad Whitford on rhythm guitar, Tom Hamilton on bass, and Joey Kramer on drums. And so this album, Toys in the Attic, was released in 1975. It was Aerosmith's third studio album. The first album had Mamakin and Dream On, both on it, so great songs. Second album was called Get Your Wings, which had Same Old Song and Dance and Train Kept a Rollin'. So they had a history of some, you know, fairly popular songs. Interesting thing about the first album, Tom, only sold 30,000 copies.
Yeah.
So it really didn't have a lot of, you know, didn't get a lot of action in terms of record sales.
You know, back in the day, and we're talking about record sales, one of the main reasons, and we'll talk about it when we get into Toys in the Attic, how things shifted, but, you know, they were literally, and, you know, I grew up with this, they were live bands. They got their following by people coming to see them, not so much to hear them.
Right.
They were a touring band. They stayed on tour. That's what they did. They just toured and toured and toured.
Yeah, so they were really they were real road dogs at the beginning, and you know, and you know, continued to play live for a long time. And we'll talk about again. I think that had an impact on this. Is another band with the third album really popped and came together, and everything just kind of, you know, really fit. All the pieces, all the puzzle pieces, kind of came together on this one for them. So that year there was, you know, some action on. There was some rock on the tracks. There was Blood on the Tracks by Bob Dylan, great album. Physical Graffiti by Led Zeppelin, Wish You Were Here, Pink Floyd. So it was definitely, even though it was 1975, you know, again, a lot of disco dance stuff there that year, and still the rock was strong. The album ended up selling 8 million copies and made it to number 11 on the Billboard chart in the US, and Rolling Stone included it on its 500 greatest records of all time. When we look at, yeah, so you know, the numbers are there for this record, and it's really something that this album, I think it was Steven Tyler said this was the album that they knew they had made it. Like he knew in his mind that this was it. Aerosmith was really kind of now a real major rock band.
Yeah, you know, and they were coming into their own. They were getting a little older. You know, they were all like 25, 26.
Right.
I think at this time Tyler was 27. So kind of like, you know, they weren't kids anymore. They weren't just doing this for the sake of doing this anymore. They actually came together as a rock band during this album. But there's a lot of stuff we'll touch on that as we go along.
Yeah, yeah. So so where does this album fall for you in terms of like all-time albums? Where would you put this one?
Personally,
Yeah.
Thanks for asking. I love every single thing about this album. The song "Toys in the Attic," the album "Toys in the Attic" is, the reason I said wow when they said that this album made the top 500. This has made the Tommy Hilkin top 10.
There you go.
For real. Yeah, it's one of my favorites to play. And every time we do this, I get to listen to it more and more and more. Yeah, it's in my top 10. Everything about this album just, I guess, what can I say? High school years. Maybe I was a sophomore in high school, just where it connected. I love everything about it. And what about you?
Yeah, I wouldn't be top 10 for me, but it would definitely be in like the top 30 or so, I would say.
Okay.
Top 10 for me is so hard to do because there's so much stuff I like,
Sure.
So, I would put some older, I would also put some newer albums in top 10, but that's so personal. So, yeah.
It's funny you say that. The impact it has on me has a lot to do with the time of your life. When you hear it, you said, when did you first hear it? So I was in high school, rocking, you know what I mean? Perfect time. I guess I was 16, which is
right. So see, that's the difference in our ages. I was 12 at the time. So,
there you go.
and that's probably why it has a little bit less impact for me personally. But it's still, Aerosmith is a great rock band, and just this is an amazing album from beginning to end. And again, it's another album where we've got 4 or 5 major songs out of their catalog are all on this album. So we'll dive into the details in a second. When they were out there, like I said before, they only sold 30,000 copies on their first album. But the band had this real kind of "we'll show you" attitude, and they were getting out there, and they're, like you were saying, they're on the road, and they were upstaging the headliners constantly. So they upstaged Kiss, Mott the Hoople, and Black Sabbath all during this period while they're out there just rocking their butts off. When the first 2 albums that they recorded, they had been playing for years in the clubs and stuff, so they had a lot of material built up from that. And we see that a lot with the first album. So the bands are out on the road or playing in clubs, and they build up these songs, and they work on them, and they work on them, and they work on them, and they perfect them. And so with Toys in the Attic, this is the first album where they started from scratch. They had to actually learn to become recording artists and learn to write songs on a deadline. So, okay, we're going to go into the studio. Now we've got to have some songs. And so that's really where it kind of changed them as a band in terms of their focus. And now they really got focused on the songwriting. And I think that really kind of shows through.
Yeah, they came together as a band, and Tom Hamilton says it, Joe Perry says it. At this album was like a make or break for them, because I'm going to share this with you. I always felt that they were like the most insecure band on the planet.
Yeah.
They were so super talented, yet they always had their foot on their own throat. Tom Hamilton didn't think he was good enough. And Joe Perry never thought he was good enough as a guitarist, ever.
Huh. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, just crazy. But again, he's not like, he's a great guitar player. He's kind of a rhythmic lead guitar player, again, he's not a Clapton, a Van Halen, or, even like a Santana. It's a much more, his leads are great, but they're not the kind of thing that you go, oh my God, wow, that was crazy, but they usually fit really well with the songs, and that's super important.
Yeah, they're more like a riff band. Again,
yeah.
They have that riff that you never forget.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
The other thing that helped was the producer, Jack Douglas. So this guy, they say, basically became the 6th member of Aerosmith. And he really helped them out a lot when they were putting this stuff together in the studio. When they had all they didn't have the songs like they did on the first 2 albums. So it helped to have this kind of, outside eye coming in and helping them put this stuff together in a way that it was going to make a difference and be a really, really great album.
The challenging part for them was they knew how to go out and play. They didn't know how to stay in the studio. They really, this is the first time they committed time to a studio. They said, we're going to come off the road. This was the first album where they said, we're going to come off the road and we're going to go in the studio and we're going to actually produce an album.
Right.
That's a big step for any band where they committed, because what's the easiest thing for any band to do is stay on the road and keep playing music.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So they did some interesting things on this when they did actually an amp experiment. So what they did was they set up 13 amps and mic'd
Yeah,
them all
yeah,
to see if it would sound better than one amp, and it just didn't. It's just too much noise, you know. And when you're in the recording process, a lot of people don't understand. It's often not loud, you know. It's getting the mics right on the amps and getting the right sound, and it's not the kind of stuff you get live where they come out there and it just like you feel the sound. It's not generally it's not like that in the studio for most bands because it
yeah.
overwhelms everything and it just sounds like mud. You end up getting no real clarity in any of the songs.
Yeah, as we go, we understand that if you're a follower of Aerosmith, they have a disease of more. They've
Yeah,
always felt that.
that's a
they've
good way
always,
to put it. With a
they've
lot of
always,
things, right?
yeah, they've always felt that more was better.
Yeah.
Literally, with a lot of things, and we'll get into that a little bit too, because it's an interesting concept of where their music was going and why.
Yeah. So, and so like I said before, Steven Tyler said that he said, I think Steven Tyler though has a lot of misrememberings of the past because there's quite a few things that are disputed that he's said, even amongst the
See?
band. So, but
Amongst
he's
everyone.
yeah, right. So, but at this point he had said, "Hey, we made it. This is." Finished the record. And he goes, "Wow, this is the one we're going to be remembered for long after we're gone."
True.
The other thing was that as they were recording this, there was a lot of friction between Joe Perry's wife and the rest of the band. So that friction started building up, and led to their breakup in the early 80s. So
Mm,
this album, in a way, it's kind of their initial peak because they did have a lot of success later on in the 80s when they reunited, a little bit poppier kind of stuff. But it also was, so it was not only the beginning for them, the beginning of their real rock careers, but it was also kind of the beginning of the end for them, which is interesting.
well, let's face it, the Toxic Twins, right? Joe,
Yeah.
Joe Perry and Steven Tyler. When you think about it, the word that comes to mind is they're probably the first guys that had a real bromance, back in the day, a love-hate relationship.
And,
Anything
yeah, no, and so the thing you see a lot with these bands is, well, look at Jagger Richards. Keith Richards talks shit about Mick Jagger still to this day, like says horrible things about him. Roger Daltrey and Pete Townsend hate each other allegedly,
Oh,
and so a lot of these kind of combinations of super creative people,
super.
they end up just being at odds with each other, and sometimes that kind of drives the music. That friction is kind of helpful to it. I mean, it's not something you want to shoot for because it sucks personally when your best bud who's in your band and on the road with you and you're living with them every day and you guys are, at each other's throats. But sometimes it really is the result is really great music.
Yeah. Major personalities. Think about having to deal with Steven Tyler your whole life.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Dude, huge, beyond huge, his personality.
Right. The only guy who I think would be more annoying to be on the road with would be David Lee Roth. Right?
Or Johnny Lydon.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
he's just kind of a dick, but
yeah.
but David Lee Roth is like, he never stops. He's always blah blah blah. It's always this. He's always this like vaudeville show.
Bozy Bob, baby.
Yeah,
Bozy
right.
Bob.
Exactly. That kind of stuff. Right.
Yeah.
And I love the guy to death. I think he's awesome. I love Van Halen. I love Aerosmith. I love, but the music is just awful.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's go ahead.
No, I was gonna say Steven Tyler's favorite two words are Steven Tyler.
That's good. That's good.
Oh, come on. Every interview, you never hear the words Aerosmith. You hear me, I.
Yeah. Too funny.
Oh, yeah. The one thing I wanted to say is a lot of this, what I get this great joy out of is, we forget about the greatness of the album covers, We really do. And this album cover, Joe Perry and Steven Tyler got together for 3 days. I got to get the name. It was great. Ingrid Hankey.
Huh.
Right? And she was actually a children's books illustrator. And they fell in love with the drawings she would. And then they took them and they twisted them into the Toys in the Attic album cover.
So that's so cool.
The idea behind these album covers was everybody had an iconic album cover. This being one of them. This is in the believe it or not, this is in the album cover Hall of Fame.
I didn't even know one existed.
Of course they did. Just like someday we'll be in the podcast Hall of Fame, Don Seckler.
Well, I am a podcaster now.
Damn it.
Damn it. That's funny.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so let's dive in. This one, we're going to start off, just do them right here. We'll do them in order. Start off with little Toys in the Attic. So, Toys in the Attic, right out of the gate, rocker, right? You love it. It's just like right in your face. So, when you saw them live, did they open with this on Toys in the Attic tour? Do you remember?
I don't remember them opening up with it, but I often tell you at all the shows I've gone to, when the greatest opening they ever did I saw was Back in the Saddle, which was pitch black. Bum, bum,
Oh,
bum,
cool.
bum,
Nice.
right?
Yeah.
Tremendous. But Toys in the Attic, I always share my favorite Aerosmith moment, and God sent it to me, was they opened up with Mamakin and rolled right into Toys in the Attic.
Nice.
And I looked at my friend and said, I can go home now. Toys in the Attic, like I said to you earlier, man, it's just everything about it. When I hear that riff, I'm happy. It puts me in a good spot where I want to be. So thank you, Aerosmith.
So good. So in this song, Joe Perry's actually playing a 1955 Les Paul Jr. that he got from Johnny Thunders, who at the time was in the New York Dolls. And so, again, we always talk a little bit about the instruments. We're not getting too much into the real minutia of the guitars and stuff. But it's interesting how on some of these great albums, often they're playing a different guitar than they're normally used to. And I think that changes things up a little bit. And it helps the creative process because, again, anything that is friction or conflict or difference, I think, drives that process and makes it better.
Oh, for sure. And, that's the thing about Joe Perry. Like I said, he was willing to try anything to make it to the next level. He kept saying to himself, I need to improve. I need to improve. Every album.
Yeah.
He's probably still saying it today.
Sure. Well, and all the greats do, right? It's if you're not trying to get better, why you're bothering,
Yeah.
So when this started off, Joe had the riff and he's kind of jamming in the studio, and it started off by Steven just kind of jumping in and doing that part where he just goes, toys, 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 toys in the attic. That kind of just happened in the studio, and then they took it from there, and it became the song that it is today. So it's actually a song too about a guy going crazy. So you have the lines, they say, leaving the things that are real behind, leaving the things that you love from mind. So, while it's a rock and roll song, it's really about a guy kind of losing it and kind of losing that touch with reality.
Yeah, you don't think of it that way, but the attic, you know what I mean? Toys in the attic.
Yeah.
It's really, it's a mindset thing where literally if you look at the album cover too, that's what I'm saying. It's amazing. It takes you right there to somebody losing their mind, that these toys in the attic are all demented.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so again, this is a legendary song on a legendary album, just kicking it off. It's just a perfect song in my eyes.
Mine too.
So up next, we have Uncle Salty, which is a little bit more laid back. Right? You love that or what?
You don't have to ask. Dude, I could just sit here. You can play it and talk over every song. I'm okay. The thing about it is, when you talk about this song, I often talk to people about why I love rock and roll, and I love the simplistic, most simple rock and roll, taking it all the way back to Chuck Berry,
Right.
where just simple chords. Listen to that intro, dude. That's as simple as you can get. To play on the chords.
And it's a bit of a shuffle, which is something that Aerosmith kind of does from time to time,
Yeah.
Which is nice. It's a little switch up from the heavy, straight ahead toys in the attic. It's a little bit of that groove, little funk in there, a little bit of that shuffle. So on this one, Tom Hamilton, the bass player, actually wrote the foundation of the song. He plays guitar on it, and it's one of his 2 writing credits on the album. So, he got to dip in a little bit more than, he has in the other albums.
Yep. This is one of the albums where he came into his own, not only musically, but professionally and confidence-wise. This is where Tom Hamilton said, "Hey, I'm part of this band."
Right. And you can hear that when you listen to that, the song, you don't even notice it's not like you go, oh, that's not a Joe Perry song. It still kind of fits in with Aerosmith. He does a great job with it. The thing about this song that a lot of people don't realize, because it's kind of a nice, happy kind of beat, but it's about an orphanage and a bordello. So there's sexual assault in it if you look at the lyrics. So it's kind of dark, but it's got this upbeat melody, which again is a little bit of that contrast and that fighting stuff that we talk about. So there's another level to it if you really dig into it.
Yeah, and you'd love to be a fly on a wall when they start piecing this stuff together, That's the whole thing. What mood were they in? What were they thinking about? What did they see? So, if it's about an orphanage and a bordello.
And what's the reaction? What's the reaction from the band when Steven Tyler goes, here's the lyrics, and they're like, wow.
Wow.
Although this is 1975, it was recorded in New York.
Yeah.
And in 75, New York was mayhem. So, crime was through the roof. You had to worry about getting mugged just walking down the street. In fact, there was a story that they said they used to finish recording at like 4 a.m. and they would walk down the center of the street because they didn't want to get too close to the alleys and because they were afraid of getting mugged. So
I lived that part of New York City. I lived that. That's what, like I say, those days, 42nd Street was 42nd Street.
Right. That was before things got a little cleaned up and everything.
Yeah, before 42nd Street became Disney.
Yeah.
I know both sides of it, my friend.
Both sides, right?
Oh, yeah.
So the next song up is Adam's Apple. And again, this is another one that I think people are probably less familiar with, but still a great song. So the interesting thing about this, that line, love at first bite, that's what Tyler wanted to name the record.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe Perry wanted to name this record Rocks, which actually became the name of it was the next album was Rocks.
Yeah.
So, again, this song, I like this song a lot, a little bit more mid-tempo. Steven Tyler got an arrangement credit on it. I don't know how they qualify that or who decides that.
He did.
Yeah, probably right. So he had arrangement credits on this song and also You See Me Crying, which is the last song on the album.
Yeah. The sexual innuendo of Tyler comes into almost every song.
Oh, yeah.
That's his whole, so as a kid, I could just always remember She Ate It was like such a great line to hear in a song.
Well, and this is Aerosmith's version of Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
So it's basically a sexy Bible story.
Thanks, Stephen. A sexy Bible story. There you
Crazy,
go.
right?
I'm sure that's how God had it planned. Hey, read this book and write a song about it.
So, but again, another great, another good song. You know, not
Ah,
legendary type song, but another you know, very consistent kind of mid-tempo song. But the next song is kind of the, for me, it's the all-time great Aerosmith song, and everybody knows this drum beat, right? And this riff. I mean, does it get any better than this? So, you know, everybody knows Walk This Way, and this is a song that was huge for them back in the day, and then also ended up bringing the band back to life in 1984 when Run DMC did the version with Aerosmith. It was actually a remake, a collaboration between the two of them. What I really like about this, and you know, again, I like the funk. I keep saying that. Well, Joe Perry was actually very into funk at the time, so he was listening to Sly and the Family Stone, and also this band called the Meters from, I think they were from New Orleans. And so he got inspired by listening to this Meters song called Pocky Away, and thought maybe it's time to kind of add something of our own in this groove, you know? So he was thinking, okay, I'm going to try and get something a little funky. So he was writing the riff and the chords, and when they were in Hawaii before a show, and some of the other guys heard it, they kind of found their parts, and then it kind of grew from there. Joe had played in R&B bands in the past, so that was kind of that groove and that funk and that kind of, you know, that real rhythm was kind of baked into his being, you know, and that was part of his magic as a guitar player.
oh yeah. We're going to talk about the guitar players, and we'll talk a little bit later on about Brad Whitford and him playing together. You know, there's magic there.
Yeah, definitely. And they're another duo that, you know, where they just sing so well together. And that makes all the world of difference when the guitar players are really kind of in sync and kind of play off each other like that.
I've never seen two guys riff together better than Brad Whitford and Joe Perry. And I know we might be taking it off on a thing, but Brad Whitford could easily be the lead guitarist of Aerosmith.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think he could. Yeah, and you know, because Aerosmith, it's a blues-based band, so the lead parts are not super complicated. You know, the blues leads are generally the easiest to play. Although, you know, you can definitely tell the skill between a really good player and somebody who's an average player. The interesting thing about this song is that Steven Tyler claimed that he came up with the drum beat at that sound check in Hawaii. So he said he jumped behind the kit before Joey Kramer came on stage. Joey Kramer in 2019 said Steven is full of shit.
Yeah, I've heard that a few times.
Yeah, so it was an ongoing thing that, like, Joey Kramer, like, you know, Steven Tyler's been saying this for decades. And Joey Kramer is like, it's another point of friction between these guys. He just says, you know, Steven's claiming and it wasn't real. And you know, when they ask other people around the band, they're very kind of politically correct. They don't want to give an answer, you know. So they say, well, like Brad Whitford said that, you know, the jury's still out. He said you have to take into consideration that Steve would probably take credit for everything that's on an Aerosmith record.
Everything.
So there's, you know, there's still that debate. Again, Steven Tyler probably overreaching, even if he did come up with it. It's kind of a douchey thing to say that the most famous drum beat by the band is not by the drummer, you know?
It's about Steven.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, you love him or you hate him. For real.
Another interesting thing about this song, you know, while they were recording, they took a break and they went somewhere in the city in Times Square or something to go see Young Frankenstein, which was in the theaters at the time. And when they came back, somebody was doing an impersonation of Marty Feldman in that movie as Igor, saying, "Walk this way." And then, the guy walks that funny way where he's like limping down the thing. Somebody said to Steven, "That'll be a great title for the song." And he heard that, grabbed a pen, ran off, and came back a couple hours later with the lyrics.
Wow. No, it's just planting the seed, right? And watching it grow, Somebody comes up to you and says, "Walk this way." Boom.
Right. And so it's those happy accidents, right? Sometimes you get that one trigger and that's bam, that makes all the difference in the world.
Oh, yeah.
So the next song on here, Big 10-inch. You can hear that piano. Hear that piano in there? So this song is a cover song. It's actually originally by a guy named Bull Moose Jackson and recorded in the 1950s. So a friend of Steven's heard it on Dr. Demento. Remember Dr. Demento?
So I certainly do.
Yeah, so Dr. Demento was kind of the first Weird Al. He did a lot of parody songs and funny songs. So this friend of Steven's heard it on that radio show, which was like a weekly thing on a lot of rock stations. And he brought it to Steven, and they said they listened to it and said, "All right, let's give it a shot." And they recorded it.
And an all-time classic, a boogie woogie.
Right.
Yeah.
There is a myth though that goes along with this song. The line is not "suck my big 10-inch." Steven Tyler swears to this day that it's "except for my big 10-inch," short for accept.
Except for my
accept. What is it?
Doesn't matter what he says.
Right. So, here's Tyler claiming credit for everything, right? But then saying that everybody's getting this wrong of what he's singing. So, it's up to you. I always say, listen, people are going to interpret the songs. They want to interpret them. And everybody, a lot of times people think they mean different things. But Tyler swears that he was not, for the one time that Steven Tyler was not overtly sexual, right?
One time.
The one time.
And throughout the years, Tyler would always talk about the band size-wise. And all kidding aside, without mentioning names, he would always say.
"Oh, really? Okay."
Oh, yeah. Yeah, all the time. It was like that was his big thing. When people would ask him a question about that, he would say, "Well, it's not what you think, but even though this one,
right,
would lead into the big 10-inch." And naturally, he would just sit there with a smile on his face.
Yeah, exactly. So
all about him.
He's a bit of a shit starter, I think.
Oh, my God. Yeah, for some reason, though, you think about it. If you're the leader of the band, so what? Or whatever it may somewhat, pushing buttons isn't the worst thing in the world. Getting people fired up, getting them motivated. Right. Somebody's got to do it, right?
And that's, I think that's a big part of Steven's motivation is that he knows that if you get the ink, you say something outrageous, people are going to print it or put it online these days or, whatever the thing is. But it's kind of like that. All publicity is good publicity, right? No such thing as bad publicity. So they lean into it a lot, and that's great, but that's who they are too as a band. So they're staying true to who Aerosmith is.
Always. They've always been on course, and that's the good thing about them, right? Even their music, it really hasn't changed much over the years. It's still Aerosmith. You hear an Aerosmith song, it's an Aerosmith song.
Sure. And here's Sweet Emotion. So to me, this song, I love that bass riff at the beginning. And it's something that Tom Hamilton came up with like all the way back in high school. But I love it that it's like, to me, it's like kind of like a puddle of mercury, like kind of sliding around, you know, and it's just, it stays boop a doop a doop. And it's so, it just brings you right into it. And then bam, they come in with that sweet, and it's so good.
Oh,
Um, your thoughts on the song?
well, just everything about it. You know, I'm a live guy, so hearing these songs, when that song comes out and they start with that, and then they just rock right into the song, it's the perfect lead in, and you don't hear a lot of bass lead ins. That, you know, it's like
Right.
a lead. It's a lead guitar being played on the bass, but just, you know, one of the greatest live songs you'll ever hear.
Great riff. Yeah. And hearing it cranked up in an arena at full volume is just amazing.
Yeah.
So interesting fact about this. So there's also that kind of maraca sound that you hear, that that's
Yeah.
actually Steven Tyler with a sugar packet.
Oh,
So they didn't have a maraca, and he saw a sugar packet laying on the console, and he's like, just, you know, right up in front of the microphone, just shaking it. Crazy, right? That's an
yeah.
instrument.
Yeah. Oh, think about it.
And the lyrics for this song kind of go back to what we were talking about at the beginning about the, you know, the album kind of being the beginning of the end because of the stress with Joe Perry's girlfriend, who later became his wife. Well, Stephen wrote these lyrics about her, so it's like, I mean, it's not even a secret or hidden. It's right in your face, like screw you.
There you go.
And the reason that he did it was that he thought that she was kind of pulling Joe away from the band. And later on, you know, now as he looks back, he admits that he was angry and jealous about it. And so that explains, you know, you talk about things that nobody cares. You're wearing out things that nobody wears, calling my name, but I got to make clear, I can't tell you, honey, where I'll be in a year. So it's basically like, you're not part of this, you know, back the fuck off and let us be. Kind of, you know, that's kind of the attitude I get from that.
You will not be our Yoko.
No. And again, it's another, you know, it's another cause of friction. Like you said, yeah, it's like a Yoko thing where, you know, she sits on an amp, George gets pissed off, or Paul gets pissed off, I forget who it was. And it just, it stews. And the poor guy, you know, Joe Perry, who's he going to pick? You know,
you have to understand that who's he going to pick is right, but you got believe me, it's not an easy decision, because no matter what you think, you are married. When you're a band, you better be married. You better be connected. And what do we say about marriage? You're connected emotionally, right?
Yeah.
Every day, you wake up every day wondering what the band's doing, just like you wake up every day wondering what your girlfriend's doing.
Right.
And that's the psyche of being a great band.
Well, and especially like these guys, they were a hardcore road band at this point. They were out there probably on a bus, you know, doing shows and living with each other all day, every day. Yeah. And so the band, they were even closer to the band than they were to their girlfriends and wives, because they, you know, a lot of the time they probably weren't there.
Yeah. And during this time too, they really, you know, Joe Perry had actually said his hope was that they would get so much success that they could actually, you know, they were using a lot of drugs at the time. You know, his ambition.
Right.
But his ambition was to get more, like I said earlier.
Right.
You know, they were a challenged band when it came to being toxic.
Well, and that's what led to their downfall. The drugs just got out of control. I mean, some of their shows, and I don't know if you saw them in the late 70s, but I've heard horror stories about how bad the shows were because they were so screwed up.
Dude, terrible. I was at a show like 78, just came out with Rocks somewhere in that ballpark. And you know, all Tyler did the whole show was spit on stage.
Right.
It was just like, I'm like, what the hell's going on? They were a disaster.
Yeah.
Everything about them.
Yeah. So I didn't see them, and I didn't get to see them until they came back in the 80s, and they were then all cleaned up, and it was actually pretty good. You know, they had their shit together and they were playing well. They were tight, but it's awful. And I've seen bands like that, you know, where the people are just so screwed up that they really just can't even perform. And it's so sad because it's such a waste.
Sex and drugs and rock and roll, my friend. It wasn't just a saying.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So true.
Oh yeah, for real.
All right, so let's take a listen to No More, No More, the next song on the album. And so while this has that picking part, it's still got that Aerosmith riff. Right?
Everything about it.
Great song.
Great song.
So yeah, a totally different opening for them with that little picking piece, but then right back to that Aerosmith riff. Interesting song about it's a road song, so it's about being in hotels, being on the road, and the women involved, and the groupies and all that kind of stuff. Interesting thing about it. So at the beginning part of the song, Joe Perry is playing in an open tuning. And again, that kind of changes the sound and how the guitar sounds a little bit. But then when it gets down to the end, there's a jam section at the end, and he actually goes back to a traditional tuning for the solo at the end. So he's actually usually going to be switching guitars if you see him play this live, because that's what they did in the studio. They played it, and he played the first part on the open tuning and then jumps in, grabs the other guitar. And with another guitarist in the band, you could stop playing for a few seconds and grab your other guitar. It doesn't upset the song.
And what I love about this album, what I love about this song is the reason we're covering these albums is you start out, they're tremendous hits, radio hits, the pop hits, the ones that make it big. But the rest of the album, as we're covering now, this song is killer. And you know what? It's not something you hear every day. This whole album.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, definitely. And, that's why it's so cool to kind of dive back into these, because a lot of these songs you forget, because you never hear them really, unless you specifically are listening to the album.
So good. This song's just tremendous.
Yeah. So the next one up is Round and Round. Little bit different sound.
Little bit. Little darker.
So, yeah, like you said, this one's a lot darker, and this one is actually written by Tyler and Brad Whitford. And Whitford actually plays lead guitar on this one. So, it wasn't like they were so locked into those roles where it's only Joe Perry playing the leads.
Right.
But when you mix it up like this, you get a little bit different sound, and sometimes that can be good. I like this song. It's not really metal. It's a little heavier, I think, a little bit dark, but it's definitely a good song.
Well, if you listen, you could hear, obviously they had influence of what was going on around them. It's a little taste of Zeppelin, a little taste of Sabbath.
Yes.
I'm not saying that heavy, but
right.
A taste like in their mind, they might have been saying, hey, these are the guys that are making it right now and killing it right now. We want to be one. I was Tyler's dream to be one of them, to be a rock star.
Well, yeah. And, like I said before, they were trying to, especially when they were live, they wanted to blow those guys off the stage when they were opening for them. So they loved them they loved their music. They said that, but they still wanted to kick their butts on stage, So I think a bit of that probably plays into this song.
Oh, I love that. Everything about it. They were highly competitive amongst themselves and amongst other bands, which is fine. If that's what's going to drive this great music, do it.
It's the motivation, and if you have that motivation, it really helps.
I recently watched an interview with Clapton, and this might have a lot to do with, remember I was saying that they grew in confidence on this album, but, a lot of people are, they're egomaniacs with an inferiority complex.
That's good.
Right? Yeah, well, that's what Clapton said about himself. He loved it and hated it at the same time.
Yeah.
And I got a feeling these guys were the same kind of way. that they were egomaniacs with an inferiority complex, never felt they could live up to being this rock star status.
Yeah,
And they
yeah.
achieved.
Oh yeah, yeah, totally did it.
Yeah.
So the last song on the album is "You See Me Crying," and this one is a little bit different than the rest of the record. A little bit more of a ballad. They actually had a full string orchestra, and you can hear that here. It's just gorgeous, right? So I think that, this is kind of a real precursor to the 80s Aerosmith, right?
You just, hey, you stepped
Did I take the words? Did I take the words out of your mouth?
as I'm listening to it, I'm saying, wow, interesting, right? We're not thinking about that in 1975, but this is where they evolved to. This song,
yeah.
Yeah.
And that wasn't them in 75, really, right? Aerosmith became that ballad band in the 80s with all those MTV songs.
Yeah,
but this was a bit different at the time.
Hair bands and ballads.
Yeah.
That's why I erased the 80s out of my life. God. Well, actually, a few things erased the 80s out of my life. Some by choice, some by not.
So the interesting thing about this song is that it's Steven Tyler's daughter, Liv, who's Liv Tyler, the actress. It's her favorite Aerosmith song. But they never were playing it live because it's super hard for Steven to sing it. Yeah. So they did play it live once, but it was because Liv asked Steven to play it for her.
Oh, that's nice.
So that's sweet. Yeah. So, that's good. So in all this, he was, I guess, I mean, I don't know how he was as a dad when she was growing up, but, they still have a really good relationship. So that seems really good.
I think once he cleaned up, he caught up.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Oh, yeah. To most of us.
And another cool story about this song. So Steven Tyler and Joe Perry were at a DJ's apartment in 1984, and the DJ put this song on. And Steven Tyler goes to Joe Perry, "Wow, this is a great song. We should cover that." And Perry looks at Steven and says, "What the fuck are you talking about? That's us."
That's us.
And Tyler goes, "Where was I?" And Joe's like, "You were in the booth singing."
Wow. That's got to tell you something, right?
Yeah. So again, I think that kind of comes back to, this was when these guys are really starting to get in heavy into probably mostly drugs. They're always, I think, drinkers, but I think this is when their addiction issues really started to grab hold of them, the two of those guys.
Oh yeah. How to cut an album in a blackout.
Right. So
that's a great song.
It is a good song. And you know what? This is again a great album. I just love it to death. Any last words about Toys in the Attic?
Well, it's one of my favorites. It means the world to me. I mean that I can put this on any day and change my state of mind. So if I ever had the chance to thank them, what this means to me, this album always has. But I always say to our listeners, the reason we're doing this is get the album, album, play it. You'll understand why these albums are falling into place. So
dive in and Sabbath. Yeah, and dive in and learn more than just Sweet Emotion and the other popular songs on the album. There's so much more to it.
Can I tell you something? The glory of what you got to realize, and in our day of playing albums, right? It was, the reason we listened to a whole album side was you didn't want to get up and change the album no matter what. So we got to hear it all because it was an album.
Right, exactly.
It plays through, right? Unless one day you're up playing DJ, but I used to stack my albums, let them play, and just play an album side. flip them over and play the other sides.
And you didn't go over to the turntable and skip a bad song. You just said, it's not worth the effort. So you listened to it, right?
You listened to the album, and that was the greatest part about it. No matter where you were hanging out, whatever it was, you listened to the whole album. Now everybody's caught up and you can listen to a song at a time. And I get it. Nothing wrong with that. But man, when you can take a dive like we're talking inside the album and really get to hear the whole album, because you got to remember, putting out an album was a challenging thing. You know, what the pressure these record companies were putting on these guys of what they had to do. Get in the studio. We need you to get an album out, right?
Yeah.
Then when you're done with the album, we need you to go on tour, you know, and
to sell more albums.
To push the album.
Yeah.
The money, believe it or not, was, you know, out there touring, pushing the albums. It was a crazy lifestyle, man.
And that's the thing that's so different today is now albums are not driving the finances for bands. It's road time. So, you know, bands still release, you know, bands that are out there that are active are still releasing music on a regular basis, but they're much more profitable when they tour now than from the records. Yeah. So that the industry has definitely changed a lot. So, you know, understanding how important albums were back in the 60s, 70s and 80s. You know, that this helps you understand that a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, it just makes me smile. I just always remember everybody going out to support the album. Every band had to go out and support their album. Yep. Man, oh man, if that's a lot of work, you don't hear that anymore. Go out and support your album. No. I'm an influencer.
I'm an influencer. I'm a podcaster, damn it.
Damn it.
Treat me as such.
Look at me. For our pal Sharon Green. There you go.
Hey, there, one for Sharon.
There you go. A shout out.
Shout out. So that's it for Toys in the Attic, Aerosmith. Like we said, check out the album if you've never listened to that album straight through. Do yourself a favor and give it a listen. Next up, Tommy, we got an all-time great album. This next album for me is definitely top 10 all time, and it's Abbey Road by the Beatles.
There we go. Look at you. I'm ready.
Tune in next week and we're going to do Abbey Road by the Beatles. And like we said, don't forget, subscribe, follow, like, review, do the stuff, click the buttons, help us out.
Do something.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week and we'll see you next week.
See you.
Bye.